purpose. Amen. Two types of people know how to stop and smell the roses. People who are unaware of time, and people who have lived enough time that they know that time slips out of their grasp. Two types of people know how to stop and smell the roses, how to take note of the little things in life. Children know how to do this on a walk. You're trying to get exercise, but it's not going to work because they're stopping to pick up sticks, to splash in puddles, to smell the roses. Children, unaware of what time is, know what it means to stop and linger over little beauties. But then there's a large gap between that and the retirement age folks who have lived enough time to know that time slips out of their fingers, to know that ambitions are often not achieved, to know that no matter how present they are in the present, time still passes by. So they will often tell the younger among us, hey, make sure to stop and smell the roses. So two types of people, those unaware of time and those so aware of time and how it slips by, will encourage us to stop and to linger over the good gifts in life. And this morning, this is what the preacher is going to do in Ecclesiastes. That if we are to find happiness, if we are to find happiness in an uncontrollable world, a world that slips out of our grasps, a world that we cannot contain, we're going to need to learn how to linger over the good that we do have. This is what the end of Ecclesiastes 2 and the beginning of chapter 3 is going to help us with. And I hope it will help us see this, your main thing this morning. That because time is out of our hands, all we can do is receive with joy what we have while we have it. Because we cannot grip and grasp time, it's out of our hands. All we can do is receive with joy what we have while we have it. Our passage starts off grim, starts off with the darkness of a cloudy day, but I hope you'll see how the sunlight breaks through. The preacher says, I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night, his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. For everything, there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak. That wasn't me shushing, by the way. I heard Corey doing that. Okay, carry on. A time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful, to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. I perceived that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it, so that people fear before him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. Friends, because time is out of our hands, all we can do, and hear that this is a release, a relief, not a resignation, all we can do is enjoy what we have while we have it, because time is out of our hands. We start off with groaning, and so boys and girls, this is your time to shine. Groaning, give me a groan. Okay, your parents didn't give you what you want, and you say, oh. You roll the eyes if you're a little older. You shouldn't do that, but you do, don't you? The preacher groans. He has groaned that the patterns of this world show no progress. The rivers run into the sea, but the sea does not get full. No progress. He has groaned that more information has led to more frustration. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is sorrow. He has groaned as he kicked back and relaxed in his courtyard garden paradise, seeing all the pleasures that his eyes had asked for, and he says, what gain is there? He groans. He has groaned because wisdom won't save him from the same final destiny as the fool. No brilliance, no intellect will keep him from ending his life the same way as the lazy and the ignorant. And so he groans. And now he groans because his work doesn't give him anything, or his work doesn't give him everything. Now, surely you have no idea what it means to complain about work, but try to imagine here someone complaining about work, but see that his workplace complaints are not about his coworkers or about his manager. His workplace complaints are that when work goes great and it builds an empire, he loses it to someone who didn't work for it. So I hated life. I hated, verse 18, all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. He cleans the house only to leave it to brutes that mess it up. I turned about and gave my heart to despair. This man who earlier in the book said, I'm going to give my heart to this quest. I'm going to give my heart to seek out and to search what is good for man to do under heaven. He gave his heart to that search, and now he turns and gives his heart to what? Despair. The quest, at least for a moment, has led to despair. So when he says, what can work gain me? His momentary, temporary conclusion is, I hate life. Because even if I get everything, I have to give it away. He continues, and we really have to experience the tears of his cry if we're going to experience the release of his solution. He asks the same kind of question: what has a man from all his toil? What gain? What can he hold on to? What can he keep from all the work that he's done? You know what gain there is? Verse 23, if you want to see what gain there is, here you go. Sorrow, frustration, or vexation, and even in the night his heart does not rest. He has earned a king-size bed and cannot sleep. This is not the cry of a poor person who doesn't know where their next paycheck is coming from. This is the cry of a rich person who has tried to gain satisfaction and he can't sleep at night. This is despair. This is vanity. This is hevel. This is ungraspable. This is uncontrollable. But as I said, this is a momentary conclusion. This is a stop on the way, a meaningful stop on the way. Just like heroes have despairing days in their quests, the preacher has despairing moments in his quest, but they are moments and momentary, not the end. Because this momentary despair, this current dark, cloudy day is going to give way to some sunlight at the end of chapter 2. This first break of day through the clouds in Ecclesiastes, he says, there is nothing better. There's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from God, who can eat or have enjoyment? Now, there are a few ways to read this passage, and some folks that I greatly admire read this as a resignation. To resign is to quit pleasantly. And so many people think, based on what he just said about hating life, giving his heart to despair, this must read something like, well, I guess there's nothing better to do. As someone who comes to your house for a party only showed up because their other better options fell through, and they had nothing better to do. They're not thrilled to be there, though. This is one way, an understandable way to read this as a resignation. Might as well find something good in this vain life. But I have a few reasons that I want to give to you why I think we should read this much more brightly, much more like the sun shining through on a cloudy day, where we see moments of brilliance and joy. Here's a few clues. Number one, the author says that finding enjoyment is from the hand of God. He then talks about the one who pleases God, that God gives him wisdom and joy. Though these words, wisdom and joy, are the same words used earlier in chapter 2 to talk about what you cannot grasp, now there's a key difference. God is giving them. At key moments in Ecclesiastes, we see that things are uncontrollable and ungraspable, but if you recognize that they're given, you can receive them. If you try to grab them, you lose them. If they're given, you can receive them. And so we see this language as God's gift to man. God has given these things. There's also another thing. God has given knowledge and joy. I think there's far too much joy talk in Ecclesiastes for this to be someone just giving up. Here's a sampling of the joy talk in Ecclesiastes. Chapter 5, 18 through 20. Everyone to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. Does this sound like resigning? Well, obviously, I read that with a certain power, so maybe let's read another one. Chapter 7, verse 14. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. In the day of adversity, consider God has made the one as well as the other. He doesn't say that the day of adversity overshadows the day of prosperity. He says God has made both, so when it's prosperous, enjoy it. Chapter 9, verse 7 through 9, go eat your bread with joy. Don't just eat your bread with joy. Drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Chapter 8, verse 15, and I commend joy. I think this is the most striking statement. I don't know how anyone could commend to you joy as a path in life if everything is vain, categorically. Chapter 8, verse 15, I commend joy. For a man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful, for this joy will go with him. Joy becomes a companion, friends. Joy will go with him in his toil during the days of his life that God has given him. We see at the end of chapter 2 this first ray of sunshine cluing us into two main things. The things in this life are gifts from God, so you can receive them, though you cannot grab them. And number two, if you receive rather than grab, you can find great joy in them. You can find great joy in them. One more reason I think that this is, and I'm staying here for a moment because a lot of the rest of Ecclesiastes is going to be built off this idea that these bright moments are actually bright moments, not resignations. One more reason why I think this is a bright spot through the clouds. At the beginning of chapter 2, verse 3, the preacher asks, what is good for man to do? After the garden park paradise MTV Cribs section where he stacked up everything and he says, I've gained nothing, he doesn't say there is no good. He says there is no gain. And then the end of chapter 2, the section on your screen, the word good comes back up in the original language. Verse 24, there is nothing better, is literally, there is not good other than. There is not good but. So this word is important. The start of the chapter says, what is good? The middle says there is no gain. The end says there's nothing good but. We're answering the question. Roundabout way, surely, but we're answering the question. And then find enjoyment. If you have your Bibles open, you might see a little note at the bottom that says, or make his soul see good. So one way to translate this, verse 24, would be, I think the KJV, the LSB, not just the JHV, Josh Holland version, not just me, but other translations that say, there is not good, but that he should make his soul see good. Now, this is a wild thing to say if he's just said, I gave my heart to despair. Someone comes to you in despair, they say, I'm depressed, they say, I'm in despair, and you say, just see good. Counselors in the room? Recommendations on how to do better than that? The point is that there's a striking change here where the preacher says, I am in despair because there is no gain, but there is good, and so I can make my soul see good because this good comes from the hand of God. To put it simply, when he asks what is good, his answer is there is not gain, but there is good. And this good comes from the hand of God, who gives good from his hand. I have two applications for you as we linger over this for a moment. One is about how we react to things, and one is about how we proact, how we think proactively, how we react to things. The preacher, if he met us on a bad day, and we were frustrated by our work, how would he want us to react? I don't think he'd say, you just need to focus on the simple things. I mean, you meet the preacher on the road, you're talking, and you say, this has been quite a challenging day at work, I'd like to quit. And he might say, oh, you think that's challenging? Wait till you realize that none of your work matters. Because you can't gain anything. You see how he drives us even farther than our temporary day-to-day frustrations? But it's actually to free us from something, because if your job, your work in or out of the home cannot gain you anything, you can stop asking it to. An example, a few weeks ago, I had a great Monday. I worked very hard. This all sounds like a weird holy brag. I worked very hard. I prayed for the church. I don't think I wasted a moment that day. And I left work, and I got in the car, and I was anxious about all the things that were undone. And I thought, could I have worked harder? I don't think I could have worked harder. Maybe done different things, but then the things I did would be left undone. So what do I do when I'm leaving a good day at work and I'm frustrated that there's so many puzzles unsolved, so many problems looming? Could it be that I'm asking something from work that it's not going to give me? That I think I can gain from this job some sort of, I'll never have problems in the future. And the preacher would say, you can't gain that, brother. All there is for you to do is to enjoy putting your hand to the plow. I know you feel that, whether you work in or out of the home. Some people have described motherhood as stringing pearls on a strand with no knot. You're doing a valuable thing, but it doesn't stay. It just falls off. And you think, how do I get ahead? And the preacher's saying, you don't. Maybe for a week, but not for a month. There's no lasting gain to your toil. So what do you do instead? enjoy the work that God has given you. I think this is how you can say, at one level, he says, I hated my job. And another level, he says, God helps me be happy in my job. Why? Because when I stop asking my work to give me gain, I can enjoy it. That's how we react to things. How do we proact? That's not a word, I don't think. How do we be proactive? How do we make our souls see good? How do we prepare our hearts and our minds to go throughout our days and our weeks and our months and our years and actually appreciate the people, the tasks, the wealth that God has given us? Morgan and I read most of a book called Gilead. In Gilead, there's an elderly pastor who is dying while his son grows up. And so this pastor gets married in his 60s, he's dying in his 70s, and he's got a 9-year-old son. And he knows he's not going to be there to give advice later, and so he does it through letter. And so the whole book is just a series of letters from this dying, aging pastor to his son. And at one moment, about halfway through the book, he has just watched his son play on a swing while his wife laughs. And he says, one of the pleasures of these days is that I notice them all, moment by moment. This dying man says, one of the joys of these days is that I notice the pleasures. You see, this man who was dying, he didn't have cloudier vision of life, actually. He had clearer vision, so that this simple thing in front of him, he could see for what it was, a joy that he didn't earn or gain and couldn't grasp, but was really there. One of the pleasures of these days is that I notice them. When we allow Ecclesiastes to frustrate us with the end of all things, to reckon with the fact that the wise dies just like the fool, the hard worker has to give their hard work away, when we really wrestle with the fact that there's no gain in this life, we get a clearer vision on the day-to-day. And we might, like the pastor, be able to say, one of the pleasures of this week is that I noticed them, and I had joy. If we live life like it doesn't end, we will spend time like it doesn't run out. But if Ecclesiastes allows us to see the end, we can start enjoying time as it happens. It will still run out. But we have a different perspective, a clearer vision. And so this has been front-loaded on how we receive with joy, but I've just hinted at the rest of this that time is out of our hands. Time runs out. Time is ungraspable. Even the most type A, organized person in this room cannot control time. It's not manipulatable. It runs out. It's out of our hands. And so what do we do then? Because time is out of our hands, all we can do is receive with joy what we have while we have it. I won't linger on this poem too long, but just to give you a sampling, this is a poem in between two concentrated God sections. The end of chapter 2 we just saw. Things are given from God. Enjoy them as from God. Right after this poem, we see that God has put eternity in our hearts. God's work endures forever. And right in the middle, we have this poem. For everything there is a season, a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up. Various interpretations of this passage, but to get to what I think is the point, one humble man's offering, I think this poem is about the fact that time happens to us. I don't think this poem is about realizing that there's always a good time to do something and you just got to figure out when it is. Because a lot of these pairings aren't about you picking the time. You don't pick your time to be born, you don't pick your time to die. You shouldn't pick a time to kill, you don't pick the time for war. Weeping and rejoicing is an interesting one. The frustrating thing about grief is that weeping happens to you. You don't just get to set aside time and say, I'm going to weep today and not tomorrow. Weeping and rejoicing, even laughter, and I think its truest, richest form is a bit of a surprise. That's why comedy is funny. because the person surprises you. You didn't see where they were going. Most of these things in this list are doing two things. Number one, they're bookending and saying this and that and everything in between. Birth, death, everything in between. Like we say north and south to mean everywhere. Birth and death, weeping and rejoicing. And also, these are things that happen to us. As Derek Kidner, he's just such a wonderful poet, says, we dance to a tune, even many tunes, but not of our own making. So we dance. We really are dancing to those tunes, and yet we didn't write the tune. We do not march to the beat of our own drum. So much of our life is reacting, whether in self-defense or dancing, to what happens around us. I talked with a brother a few months ago who was hired at a job, and then a month later, the manager that hired him got fired. It happened to him. So many of those things in our life, the people around us that stay or go, that say this or that, the texts we receive randomly throughout the day, they just happen to us. Time happens to us. We dance to a tune, even many tunes, but not of our own making. And this is a humbling thing, because we are not authors writing our own script. We are actors playing in a role that is written for us. Not that we don't have meaningful choices, but most of our meaningful choices are reactions to something else. You can choose to restrain yourself or allow your temper to fly, but that's a reaction, isn't it? To something else, some other stimuli that there's so much of our life that is simply happening to us and we're reacting to. And this poem, I believe, is grappling with that for us. There is a time for war and for peace, not that you should pick the right time, but that war will happen and peace will happen. Love will happen and hate will happen. Mourning will happen, dancing will happen. And those all have their time. Another reason I think that this is what this passage is saying to us is because later in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11, the preacher will say, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor riches to the intelligent, but time and chance happen to them all. What does that mean? The swift person should win the race, the strong person should win the battle, the intelligent person should be wealthy, but that's not how this world works all the time. Time and chance happen to many of us, whether it's the geographical, the natural world, time and chance, whether it's how our bodies decay or have... Time and chance happen to us all, no matter how much we want to control this life. To put it one way, you cannot gain freedom from time through controlling it. Even if, this is the way my mind works. I read this and I go, okay, I'm going to be the most present person that's ever lived. And even if I nail that and am the most present person for the rest of every moment, the rest of my life, it will still slip away from me. I will still look back and think, how did the kids grow up so fast? Where did time go? We cannot gain freedom from this existence in time that happens to us, time that slips away. We can't free ourselves from that through controlling it, but in time, we can gain freedom if we give up the need to gain control. Freedom in Ecclesiastes comes not from more control, but realizing you never had it. Time and chance happen to them all. And so this poem helps us grapple with the idea that time is not in our hands, a clay that we can mold. The world is not something we can shape to do what we want. And this sets us up for another one of those concentrated seasons or sections talking about God. What gain? That same question, what gain? After all is said and done, war and peace, tearing and sowing, silence and speaking, weeping and laughing, mourning and dancing, what gain? Still the same question, but now with a different flavor of an answer. Verse 11, he has made everything beautiful in its time. Everything? War? Everything? Death? hatred, oppression. We're going to wrestle with oppression next week in chapter. That's beautiful. This word beautiful has a flavor to it of fitting. Some people have translated appropriate. I think this statement that's hard to wrestle with. He's made everything beautiful in its time, even deep sorrow, even things that are grievous evils, the preacher's going to say. How does this work? The end of the sentence, he has put eternity into man's heart yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. Here's the weirdness of your life. There is eternity in your heart, but you're trapped in time, and you can't figure out what God is doing from the beginning to the end. And even if you spend your entire life trying to figure it out, you won't figure it out. Ecclesiastes 7. But one way Kidner again puts this is, unlike animals, humans are immersed in time, but we long to see our moments in their full context, for we know something of eternity, enough at least to compare the fleeting with forever. Yet, the grand design escapes us, for we can never stand back far enough to view it as the Creator does, whole and entire, from the beginning to the end. The thing in your life that you say, how could this be beautiful in its time? You ask that question because you're in time, and you can't figure out how it ends, and you can't step back with a God's eye view to see it like the Creator does, as one whole tapestry beginning to end. But God does. And so you can be patient while trapped in time. I perceive there's nothing. This is another one of those, these statements about joy, what's so interesting about it is they're often bumper to bumper with frustrating statements. So much so that many commentators, I think, try to resolve the frustration by saying one overshadows the other. But I think they're back to back so often for a reason, because the preacher gets to one conclusion, one stop on the way, and that births a greater conclusion. It's frustrating that God has put eternity in your heart, yet you cannot find out what he's doing from the beginning to the end. And so I perceive, verse 12, that there's nothing better to do than to be joyful in the times that you do have and to do good as long as you live. There's nothing better than to do that because you can't figure it out. Also, everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil because this is God's gift to man. For the person, chapter 2, who gives their heart to trying to find gain in this world, they end the day with sorrow and sleeplessness. But for the person who says, there's no gain and I cannot figure out what God is doing, there is joy, good to do, eating and drinking, and pleasure in your work. And the key difference is, do you see this life as graspable and controllable, or have you given up and seen this life as given to you? Out of your grip, but in your hands. This is all God's gift to man. You may wonder how this connects to Christ. You may wonder how this connects to Christ. At its essence, sin is a failure to be grateful and to honor. Romans 1:21. Although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. And so their minds were given up to futility and their foolish hearts were darkened. What is the core of sin? We know God, but we don't honor him, so we do what we want with our bodies. We know God, but we don't give thanks to him. We do what we want with the stuff that he's given us. That's the problem. And so you might actually find yourself right now, later this week, going, okay, Pastor, you're telling me that the fix to this life is to enjoy the good gifts that God has given me, but I can't. Actually, I've stopped trying because I get mad at myself that I have the inability to cherish the good thing that's right in front of me. So we need something more than just wisdom. Wisdom is great. We need something more than just wisdom. We need help for our hearts to attain that wisdom, to love that wisdom, to see that wisdom. And this is, thanks be to God, where Christ comes in. There's this beautiful, gut-wrenching moment where the Apostle Paul in chapter 7 is saying that there's a war waging in him, that he knows the good to do in front of him, but he doesn't do it. What a war, to know what is good and not do it. And the other part of that battle is he knows what he shouldn't do, and he does it. And so you're listening to Ecclesiastes, you're going, okay, I know I'm supposed to stop and smell the roses. I know I'm supposed to see these things, this job, this house, these kids, this church, this sunny day. I'm supposed to see these as good gifts, but I just don't. I want different ones. What is there for you? Well, after this wrestling, Paul says, this is what my heart is like. I know what's good, I don't do it. I know what's wrong, I do it anyways. He says, who will deliver me from this body of death, O wretched man that I am? But thanks be to God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Friend, not only do you need the wisdom to see the things in your life as out of your control, but good gifts from God's hand, you need the spiritual power from Christ himself to deliver you from the body of death. That war that wages within you. Contentment in this life is a spiritual issue that we must ask of God for his grace. Lord, help me. One of the things Christ does chiefly is give us new lenses, new glasses through which to see the world. Our eyes are open to the glories of the gospel that we never saw before. Our eyes are open to the wretchedness of sin. Our eyes are open to the goodness of the law. Our eyes are open to the richness of this world. One of the chief things Christ does is open our eyes so that we can behold glories. And so we leave this place and we say, Christ, continue your work in my heart, this heart that feels so wretched sometimes, so weak to simply just enjoy and take pleasure in the good gifts that you've given me. Would you please deliver me from this body of death so that I can again say, thanks be to God in Jesus Christ. Friends, Christ is good, not only to tell you how to live, but to give you life so that you can live. Plead with him for this grace to continue changing you. If you have not been changed, you are not yet a new creation, plead with him to change you. To by the power that raised him from the dead, the very Spirit of the living God, to birth in you new life. That's what it actually takes, not just wisdom, but it takes new life for us to look around this world and say, for the time I have, what a gift. But when he gives us new eyes, for the time we have, what a gift. Because even when time is out of our hands, we know that all we can do, and we get to do it, is to receive with joy what we have while we have it. And so, two analogies here to end our day. Summer is like halfway over, guys. We long for summer. And it's going to be gone. Enjoy what you have while you have it. Fix your eyes on the beauty around you, the opportunities in front of you. Put away things that cloud your goggles with unnecessary water. Secondly, as you're reading through Ecclesiastes, we'll conclude with this image. Reading Ecclesiastes is like climbing a steep mountain in the fog. The climb is hard, and it's often hard to see. Sometimes you can't see in front of you, sometimes you're sore, and sometimes you despair of ever getting to the top. Yet every once in a while, you reach a peak that pokes out above the fog, and you see clearly. You see far, you see wide, you see beauty. You're above the fog, and you finally see clearly. This is what just happened in Ecclesiastes 2. We got a peak. But the hike is not done. We have to go and descend and hike more. And so we descend back into the clouds. But we've seen one glimpse of glory, and we'll see more, and they'll be higher, and they'll be more glorious. And the beauty of the summit will be all the more freeing because of the frustration that we experienced during the hike. Let's pray.